Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Chapter 1. My first home. The first place I can remember was a large pleasant meadow. I lived on my mother's milk, as I could not yet eat grass. In the daytime I ran by her side. At night I lay close beside her. When it was hot, we stood in the shade of the trees. When it was cold, we slept in a warm shed near the master's house. We were very fond of our master, Farmer Gray. He called my mother Duchess, and I think she was his favorite. He was a good kind man, so we were well off. When I was old enough to eat grass, my mother went to work in the daytime. But she always came home at night. There were 6 other young colts in the meadow. They were all older than I. Oh, how I loved to run with them. But sometimes they would bite and kick. One day my mother told me, "The colts who live here are good colts, but they have not learned good manners. You come from a fine family. Your father has a good name in these parts, and I think you have never seen me bite or kick. So I hope you will grow up gentle and well-mannered. Do your work with a good will and never learn bad ways." I never forgot my mother's words, for I knew she had seen many things. One day we heard the sharp cry of dogs. "They have found a hare," said my mother. "Now we shall see the hunt." A pack of howling dogs chased a frightened hare across the fields. Many men followed on horseback. The hare tried to get through our fence, but it was too late. The dogs were upon her. One of the men rode up and whipped off the dogs. He held the hare up by the leg. She was torn and bleeding. All the gentlemen seemed pleased. I did not know what to think. Then there was a shout down by the brook. 2 horses had fallen and thrown their riders. One man seemed all right, but the other man lay quite still. "His neck is broken," said my mother. The men ran to his side. I heard someone say it was Squire Gordon's only son. Young Gordon's black horse lay moaning on the grass. A horse doctor came to look at him. He shook his head. "One of his legs is broken." I saw a gun flash in the sunlight. There was a loud bang and an awful shriek. Then all was still. The black horse moved no more. My mother seemed very sad. "The black horse's name was Rob Roy," she said. He was a fine bold horse whom she had known for years. She never went to that part of the meadow again. A few days later we heard the church bell ringing. They were taking young Gordon to the churchyard to bury him. I never knew what they did with Rob Roy. But it was all for one little hare. Chapter 2. My breaking in. In time I grew quite handsome. My coat was bright black, and I had 1 white foot and a pretty white star on my forehead. When I turned 4, my master said it was time to break me in. He would trust no one else to do it. To break in means to teach a horse to wear a saddle and bridle and to carry a rider, or to pull a carriage. The horse must always do his master's will, even when he is tired or hungry, hos temmiswood. So you see, this breaking in is a great thing. First my master gave me some oats. He talked gently to me and petted me. Then he got the bit into my mouth. Oh, it was a nasty thing. You cannot think how bad it felt. But I knew my mother always wore one when she went out, so I took it in good spirit. Next came the saddle. It was not so bad. Then I had a few more oats and a little walk. This we did every morning. Then one day my master got on my back and rode me round the meadow. How strange it felt! But I was proud to carry my master. The next day the blacksmith nailed a curved piece of iron to each of my hooves. My master called these horseshoes. They made my feet feel stiff and heavy, but in time I got used to them. Then came the harness. A stiff heavy collar went round my neck, and a bridle held leather pieces called blinkers against my eyes. I could see only straight ahead. Next was the saddle with a nasty stiff strap under my tail. That was the crupper. I never felt more like kicking, but of course I could not kick such a good master. After that I often went out in double harness with my mother. With her it was easy to learn how best to go. One day she told me, there are many kinds of men in the world. Some are good and kind like our master, but others are bad and cruel. A horse never knows who may buy him, so I do not know where you will go. But I hope you will always do your best and keep up your good name. I did not know it then, but I was soon to leave my first home. Chapter 3. Birtwick Park. Squire Gordon bought me and took me to Birtwick Park. It was a pretty place with a large house and gardens. The stables had room for many horses and carriages. I was put into a nice loose box with clean sweet hay. In a loose box the horse is not tied up but is left free to do as he likes. It is a great thing to have a loose box. In the stall next to mine stood a fat gray pony. "How do you do?" I said. "What is your name?" The pony turned round as far as he could. His was not a loose box, for he was tied up. "My name is Merrylegs," he said. "I carry the young ladies on my back. Are you going to live next door to me? I hope you have a nice temper." Just then a chestnut mare looked over at us. She was tied too. Her ears were laid back and her eyes flashed. "So, it is you who have turned me out of my box." "I have turned no one out," I said. "The man who bought me put me here." But she just turned away. Later, when the mare went out, Merrylegs told me, her name is Ginger. She bites. One day she bit James Howard, our stable boy, in the arm, and now the young ladies are afraid to come in here. I miss them very much. Maybe they will come again now, if you do not bite or snap. "I never bite anything but grass, hay, and oats," I said. "I cannot think why Ginger does." "It is just a bad habit," said Merrylegs. "But John Manley, our groom, does all he can to please her, and James is as kind as can be. So it is Ginger's own fault she did not stay in that box." The next day John Manley brought me round for Squire Gordon to try. I remembered my mother's words and I tried my best to please him. "How do you like him?" Mrs. Gordon asked when we came home. "And he is the most pleasant horse I have ever ridden," said the squire. "What shall we call him?" They thought of some names, Ebony, Blackbird, but those would not do. Then Mrs. Gordon said, "He is such a beauty, with his black coat and sweet face." "What do you say to Black Beauty?" "Why, yes. That is just the name." John told James to call me Black Beauty. "I might have named him Rob Roy," said James, "for I never saw two horses more alike." "That's no wonder," said John. "Didn't you know? Farmer Gray's Duchess was the mother of them both." "So, poor Rob Roy killed at the hunt was my brother. No wonder my mother was so sad that day. It seems horses have no family. At least, not after they are sold." Chapter 4. Ginger's Story. A few days later I went out in the carriage with Ginger. I was surprised at how hard she worked. John never had to use the whip with us, and our paces were much the same. On Sundays we were turned out into the orchard. What fun it was to run and roll in the soft grass. One quiet afternoon I told Ginger about my upbringing. My life has been so different, she said sadly. No one was ever kind to me. My breaking in was an awful time. Several men grabbed me and forced the bit into my mouth. They whipped me and dragged me around. They never once gave me the chance to know what they wanted. Then I was sold to a gentleman in London. He used the bearing rein to make me look fancy. I hated it worse than anything. Oh, I like to hold my head up as high as any horse, but a bearing rein makes you keep it up for hours at a time. I wanted to please my master, but the bearing rein made me angry. To feel such pain just for the love of fashion. One day I could stand it no more. The rein was just too tight. I kicked as hard as I could till I broke free. My master sold me. After that I changed hands many times, but it was always the same. Each new master used the bearing rein, and each groom was meaner than the last. I made up my mind that men were my enemies. Of course, it is different here, said Ginger. But who knows how long it will last? I was sorry for Ginger, but I knew very little then. I thought she made things out to be worse than they really were. Then as the weeks went by, we became good friends. Ginger seemed happier and her temper grew sweet. Our lives at Squire Gordon's were very happy indeed. I do believe that Mare is getting fond of me, said James one day. She'll be as good as Black Beauty soon, said John. Kindness is all she wants, poor thing. Chapter 5. A stormy day. One day my master had a trip to make on business. John put me to the light cart, and we were on our way. It had rained for days, and the wind was brisk. We rode along at a good pace till we came to a small wooden bridge. The river is rising fast, the toll-keeper called out as we started to cross the bridge. I fear it will be a bad night. Soon we reached the town. The master's business took a long time, and it was late when we started for home. The wind was blowing harder now. The trees creaked and swayed, and leaves swirled round us as we quickened our pace. It was nearly dark when we came to the bridge. As soon as my feet touched the wood, I knew something was wrong. I came to a dead stop. Go on, Beauty, said my master. He gave me a light touch with the whip, but I dared not go. John got down and tried to lead me across. Come on, Beauty. What's the matter? Of course I could not tell him, but I felt sure the bridge was not safe. Just then the toll-keeper ran out of the house on the other side of the bridge. Stop! The bridge is broken. If you cross, you will surely fall into the river. Thank God, said my master. That's my Beauty, said John with pride. We had to take a longer way home. Mrs. Gordon met us on the front steps. Is everything all right, my dear? She asked fearfully. Yes, said my master. But only because your Black Beauty is wiser than we are. He kept us out of the river tonight. What a good supper they gave me that evening. And such a thick bed of straw. There could be no better place than this, I thought, and I fell asleep feeling lucky indeed. Chapter 6. The Fire. A few weeks later the master and mistress went to visit friends. James drove, for he was soon to go to a new place to work and needed the practice. It was a long drive, so we had to stop for the night at a hotel. Ginger and I were left in the stable. I cannot say how long I slept. When I woke up, it was still dark. I could hear Ginger coughing. I heard another sound, too, a crackling sound. Above us flickered a strange red light. I did not know what it was, but it made me afraid. The other horses woke up too. They pulled at their halters and they stamped the floor. Danger seemed all around us. Outside I heard someone yell, "Fire!" A young stable boy burst in with a lantern. His hands shook as he untied the horses. He tried to lead them out, but they would not move. He was in such a hurry and seemed so scared himself. How could we trust him? He tried to drag me out by force, but that only frightened me more. Then I heard James's voice, as sweet and cheery as always. "Come, Beauty, come with me." He tied his scarf round my eyes. I could see nothing. There was only his calm voice. Only his gentle hands upon my neck. I let him lead me into the yard. Then he slipped the scarf from my eyes and said, "Here, somebody. Hold this horse while I go back for the other." I let out a shrill whinny when I saw him run back into the burning stable. By now the hotel was in an uproar. People in nightgowns shouting and running. Frightened horses and carriages jammed into the yard. My master pushed through the crowd. He shouted toward the stable, "James!